Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to talk about professional risk management. Now, I know it sounds a little corporate, right? But it's really just a powerful way of making a plan for when things get unpredictable. And we're going to dive into it using a real-world story where the stakes, well, they literally couldn't have been higher.
So just imagine this for a second. A global pandemic is raging. The entire world is locking down. And your one job, is to get medical oxygen to hospitals that desperately need it. On time. Every single time. I mean, where do you even start with a problem that big? All right, let's get into it.
This wasn't a hypothetical. This was the exact reality for Pakistan Oxygen Limited. They were on the hook to keep oxygen flowing to healthcare centers all across the country. And for them, the central question wasn't if things would go wrong. Oh no, they knew things would. The real question was what would go wrong and how on earth could they get ready for it?
And that brings us right to the first, and maybe the most important step in professional risk management. Look, it's not about having a crystal ball. It's about systematically thinking through all the possibilities. It's about taking that nagging what-if feeling and turning it into an actual, concrete plan.
Here's the key idea that might surprise you. Risk isn't just about the bad stuff. Not at all. A professional looks at the entire landscape. They absolutely ask, what could completely derail this project? But, and this is crucial, they also ask, what amazing, unexpected thing could happen that we could jump on? It's such a simple shift in how you think, but it's so powerful. On one side, you've got your threats, the classic problems you'd expect. But on the other, you've got opportunities, the potential lucky breaks you can actually plan to catch. And here's the thing, they're both called risks because they're anything that could knock your original plan off course, for better or for worse.
So let's bring this back to our story. A huge threat was super obvious. What if the lockdown completely messes up our transport? But they also spotted a huge opportunity. This crisis might actually help them fast-track getting a brand new, super efficient production plant, which would be a game changer for them in the long run.
Okay, so you've got this giant list of all your threats and all your opportunities. Now what? You can't tackle everything at once, right? You'd go crazy. You need a playbook, a way to figure out what you need to worry about right now.
And really, it all boils down to these two incredibly simple questions. First, how likely is this thing to actually happen? And second, if it does happen, what's the damage? Or what's the reward? An event that's super likely and has massive consequences? Yeah, that's your number one priority. Something that's a long shot with a tiny impact? You can probably put that on the back burner.
To answer these questions, pros use a really cool visual tool. It's called a risk matrix. Just think of it like a priority map. It lets you see, at a single glance, what needs your immediate attention, just based on where it lands in those red, yellow, or green zones.
This whole process, of course, has a formal name. It's a risk assessment. That vertical axis there, that's the likelihood, the odds of it happening. And the horizontal axis, that's the consequences, the impact. You just plot your risks on this grid and boom, you get a clear, color-coded guide to just how serious each one is.
All right, let's look at a real one. See that risk labeled NR1? That stands for Transport Disturbed Due to Lockdown. Now look at where it is on the map, way up in the top right corner. That's deep in the red zone. And why? Well, because during a national lockdown, transport disruption was highly likely, and the consequence of not getting oxygen to hospitals was, well, catastrophic. This is priority number one, no question.
Now let's track an opportunity. Find PR1, which is about getting that improved, more efficient plant. The consequences are huge. It would be an incredible benefit. But the likelihood of it happening super quickly? A bit lower. So while it's still a really high priority to chase after, it doesn't have that same 5-alarm fire urgency as the transport threat.
So, we figured out our risks, and we put them in order of importance. But a plan that just sits on a piece of paper is totally useless. This is where the most important document of all comes into play.
This right here, this is the risk register. It's the master plan, the playbook. It takes all that brainstorming and that fancy priority matrix and turns it into an actual to-do list. It lays out the risk, what's causing it, and most importantly, what you're going to do about it and who is responsible for getting it done.
Let's zoom in on that number one threat we talked about, R001, the transport problem. The risk is crystal clear. The proposed response, it's proactive and pretty smart. Just order all our raw materials way in advance to build up a safety cushion. And notice that last column? It has an owner, the supply chain manager. That right there creates real accountability.
So you see, for any negative risk, the goal is pretty straightforward. You either try to avoid the thing completely, you take steps to make it less painful if it does happen, or you have a solid plan B ready to go. The point is, you never get caught totally by surprise.
Okay, now let's flip that and look at the opportunity. R004, the new and improved plan. The response here isn't about playing defense. It's all about offense. The plan is to capitalize on it right away by getting more orders out the door faster. And again, it's assigned to a specific manager to make sure it actually happens.
And that's the whole mindset when it comes to positive risks. You're not trying to dodge them, you're actively trying to run towards them. The goal is to seize the moment, make the good outcome even better, and make sure that lucky break doesn't just slip through your fingers.
Okay, so that was a pretty intense story about how a major company handled a massive crisis. But what does all this systematic thinking have to do with the rest of us? Well, as it turns out, it has everything to do with us. Because when you strip it all down, this whole process is just a framework for making better decisions when you don't know what's coming next. And that's something we all do every single day, whether we're running a company or, just running our own lives.
Seriously, just think about it. Are you planning a big event, like a wedding? That's risk management. The caterer could cancel. That's a threat. You might find an amazing deal on a venue. That's an opportunity. Starting a huge new project at work. What if a key person quits? That's a threat. What if you finish way ahead of schedule? That's an opportunity. See? This framework fits literally everywhere.
So I'll leave you with this question to chew on. Whether it's a threat you want to prepare for or a really cool opportunity you want to grab, what's one risk in your life that could use a little bit of this kind of structured planning? Give it some thought. Thanks for watching.